The drive back to Salem was quiet. I let the radio play soft jazz, mostly background noise to my thoughts. Portland had gone better than expected. Client signed, contract extended. I should have been proud, but my mind was on other things. Luca and I had finally picked a tentative wedding date. I had a folder full of venues and budget notes on my passenger seat. It was time to stop postponing. As I turned onto the familiar road leading to my parents' house, that small-town stillness greeted me like it always had. The peeling white fence, the overgrown rose bushes Mom kept saying she'd trim. Nothing ever changed here, and that was comforting, until it wasn't. The garage remote was still clipped above the visor. I pressed it. The door creaked open slower than I remembered. Light bled into the room as the panels folded up, and then stillness. No car. I blinked, reached up and pressed the remote again. It wasn't a glitch. The garage was empty. Just an oil stain where my Mustang used to sit. My chest tightened, not from panic, but that kind of quiet disbelief that creeps in like fog. The 1969 Mustang wasn't just a car. It was the first thing I ever bought with money no one helped me earn. Spent years fixing it. I'd parked it there before the Portland trip. No one else had keys. I got out of the car, my hand gripping the folder tighter than necessary, and walked inside. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and meatloaf. It always did on Fridays. They were all at the table. Mom, Dad, Juliet, 3 bowls, 3 forks clinking against ceramic. Not one head turned when I entered. I paused at the threshold of the kitchen. "Where's my car?" No greetings, no welcome home, just silence. Then that smile I know too well from my mother. "Let's not overreact," she said, setting her fork down with exaggerated calm. Juliet sipped her wine like she was a guest, not the cause of the tension already curdling in the air. "It's just temporary," she said. "I needed it for inventory transport. You'll get it back." Dad looked at the placemat, wouldn't meet my eyes. I stayed standing. "Inventory?" Mom gave a tight shrug. "She needed something reliable, and your wedding account was just sitting. It made sense to consolidate." Consolidate. I let the word sit. It echoed. "You used my savings?" Mom's tone didn't change. "We borrowed, for family. It's what families do." No apology, no shame, not even a hesitation. That was the moment something inside me shifted, not shattered, just separated, like I'd been holding my breath for years and hadn't realized how much it cost. I didn't say anything for a second, just looked at all of them, eating dinner like they hadn't gutted my plans behind my back. "They always joked about my savings," I muttered, mostly to myself. "Called it dead money." Juliet rolled her eyes. "You're overreacting. You're not even married yet." That did it. I set the folder on the counter. It wasn't a donation, and it sure as hell wasn't forgotten. Mom straightened in her chair. "Watch your tone." I looked at her. No anger, just clarity. "You have 30 days. I want every cent back, or I start filing theft charges." Juliet stood halfway. "Dorian?" But I was already walking toward the door. As I reached for my coat, Mom called after me. "You're not walking out like this, are you?" I didn't turn. "I'm walking out like someone who finally figured out what silence cost him." The cold air outside slapped my face the second I stepped out. It didn't sting. It steadied me. That garage door closed behind me like a punctuation mark. Family shouldn't feel like a robbery in slow motion. I didn't sleep much the night I left their house. Even in my own apartment, with the door locked and the blinds drawn, it still felt like something was leaking through the walls. I sat at the edge of my bed for a long time, staring at the folder of wedding plans I'd placed on my dresser weeks ago. It was still there, untouched. I wasn't ready to open it, but I needed something to ground me, so I started small. I called the bridal boutique the next morning. I told them I'd be picking up the wedding suit I'd put on hold. The lady on the phone hesitated. "Oh, that order was canceled, sir." "By who?" There was a pause. "A woman claiming to be your emergency contact. She said, you were no longer in the mental state to proceed with a wedding." I didn't speak for a few seconds, not because I didn't understand, but because I did. "Was her name Raylene Keller?" "Yes," she said softly. I didn't say goodbye, just hung up. At the house, I found the box open in the hallway closet. The packaging for the suit was crumpled at the bottom like someone had stepped on it. Inside, there was a manila envelope. I opened it, and there it was, a refund check. But not addressed to me. It was made out to Juliet Keller Enterprises. I stared at it for a while. Then I folded it back up, put it in my pocket, and walked upstairs to my old room. I didn't slam doors, didn't raise my voice, just moved. The room was dusty, untouched, except for the corner near the window where old school trophies sat like someone left them there out of obligation, not pride. As I wiped down the desk, something slid out from the back of the drawer. It was a wedding invitation, mine. The one I designed myself. Cream cardstock, gold embossed names, a trifold with a matte finish. It had a faint tea stain across the bottom corner. Bent edges. Someone had used it like a coaster. I remembered showing that exact design to my mother weeks ago. She laughed. It's off-center. Looks like a kid made it. Didn't even glance a second time. I stood there holding it in my hand, pressing the bend back into place with my thumb like it would somehow fix the disrespect. It didn't. They didn't rip it. They didn't throw it away. They just didn't care enough to keep it safe. Juliet strolled in a few minutes later, sipping one of her kale smoothies. "You'll love this one," she said casually, holding it up. "Mango turmeric. Great for inflammation." She sat down on the edge of the bed like she hadn't gutted my life's plan last week. "I wanted to thank you, by the way," she said. I didn't answer. For being so chill about everything, most people would have thrown a fit. But you've always been grounded. It's why I knew you'd understand. Still, I didn't say a word. That's the thing about silence. People take it as compliance. Raylene peeked into the room. "Still young," she said, nodding toward the invitation in my hand. "Plenty of time to plan again?" I turned to face them both. "It wasn't about time," I said. "It was about respect." They didn't reply. They couldn't. I left not long after. Took the invitation with me. Back at my apartment, I pinned it to the corkboard above my desk, next to bills and car documents. Not as a memory, as a witness. I stood there for a while, just staring at it. You know what's funny? Growing up, every birthday cake had Juliet's name on it in bigger letters than mine. Even on mine. At my graduation, she got a limo and roses. Me? I got a congrats Dian text from mom. D, not Dorian, never the full name, never the full credit. I sat down, stared at the wall, thought about the years I spent swallowing things like that. They didn't forget me. They just learned to speak around me. And I let them. Not anymore. I watched families out on the street that day. A couple holding hands in front of the flower shop. A teenager arguing with his mom about a prom budget. And I wondered what it felt like to be an investment, not just a fallback plan. At the park, an older woman hummed softly on a bench. Some hymn I hadn't heard since Grandma passed. I sat down a few feet away. Didn't speak. Didn't need to. Her presence steadied something in me I didn't know was shaking. And right then, something clicked. They didn't just borrow from me. They extracted what they thought I wouldn't miss, because I never spoke up. What you build for yourself, no one can take. But what you give without boundaries, they'll assume was always theirs. Sibyl called on a Wednesday morning. Her voice was tight, polite, and stiff, like a coat that hadn't been worn in years. "Can you meet for coffee? I'll be in Eugene this afternoon." We hadn't shared a meal, hell, even a full sentence, in years. She moved out early, kept her distance, made peace with silence the way most people make peace with aging. Still, I said yes. Curiosity, maybe. Or maybe I was ready to hear what I hadn't dared to ask. We met at a cafe near the university. One of those places that puts flowers on every table and plays piano covers of pop songs nobody wants to admit they like. The air smelled like cinnamon and old pages. She was already seated when I walked in. She looked older than I remembered, not in years but in weight, not physical either. Emotional weight shows up in the eyes. We talked about nothing for the first 10 minutes, weather, traffic, coffee prices, and then, just like that, she dropped it. "Do you remember when Mom borrowed my college fund?" I blinked. My mouth opened, then shut again. "No, I didn't." "She never told you," Sibyl said, half smiling, half predicting the answer. I shook my head slowly. She used it to pay for our brother's wedding and his truck loan. I didn't interrupt. Couldn't. She sipped her drink, stared through me like I was just now seeing what she's been carrying for decades. They said he needed it more, that I was strong, that I'd figure something out. She laughed without humor. I took out 2 jobs, canceled grad school, never got reimbursed, never even got a thank you. I leaned back in my chair. My spine felt like it was holding more than my body. I didn't say anything. She looked at me. You're not the first, Dorian, and you won't be the last, if we keep letting them. That line settled in me like lead. We weren't raised. We were rationed. After she left, I didn't go straight home. I walked around campus for a while, then drove with the windows down, letting the cold air bite my arms. By the time I got back to my apartment, the sun was beginning to fade. The boxes I'd left unpacked from my last visit to the house were still stacked near the hallway. I opened one labeled Old Bedroom. Mostly junk. Participation ribbons. A cracked photo frame. But at the bottom, in a yellowed envelope, I found something I hadn't seen since I was a kid. A photo of Dad holding me. I had to look twice. He was smiling, wide, genuine, proud. I looked about 6, maybe 7. His arm was around me like I meant something to him back then. The photo had been torn at the edge, like it was once framed and removed in a hurry. I remembered that day. School recital. He showed up for 5 minutes, said he had to leave early for work, but someone must have caught that moment in time anyway. For a moment, I was visible. I laid the photo on the kitchen counter and just stood there, staring. Then I got a notebook and started writing. All the times my name was left off the card, when I was told to be the bigger person, when Juliet got her own celebration for getting a driver's license, and I didn't even get a phone call on my college acceptance. Achievement wasn't celebrated, it was expected, and when you didn't get rewarded for surviving, you started thinking that maybe survival wasn't worth it. Silence, I realized, wasn't just a habit. It was an inheritance. We weren't special. We were conditioned. I wrote that down too. Then I walked over to my corkboard, took a tack from the edge, and pinned that photo right next to the crumpled wedding invite they never cared to preserve. Not for nostalgia, for evidence. Later that night, I texted Sybil. I'm glad you told me. You deserved better too. She didn't reply immediately, but I saw the read receipt. I sat down with my laptop, opened my bank records, printed out every document. Logged every transaction tied to the wedding fund and the Mustang. Created a new folder, not for revenge, but for clarity. Because now I knew this wasn't a mistake. This was a pattern. And maybe the legacy I inherited was silence. But the one I leave behind will speak. It was late in the afternoon when I pulled into my parents' driveway again. The sky was overcast, the kind that made the neighborhood feel quieter than it really was. I wasn't there to talk. I just needed to grab a manila folder I'd left in the living room cabinet, legal stuff I hadn't had the stomach to deal with the last time I was there. As I stepped into the hallway, the familiar scent of lemon polish hit me. The same ceramic rooster clock ticked in the background. It all looked the same. Except, on the kitchen counter, I spotted something new. A stack of white invitations. Gold-embossed, glossy cardstock. I picked one up. Juliet Keller. Launch Gala. In celebration of a new era in clean beauty. I flipped it over. Elegant script. Venue, dress code, RSVP. Mom entered from the laundry room, folding towels in her arms. Oh, good, you're here, she said, like I was part of a schedule. She handed me an envelope. Yours? Make sure you're early this time. We'll be taking a family photo. No mention of my canceled wedding. No glance toward the pain they'd poured into my life. Just this casual erasure. They've moved on, I thought. Not from the moment. From me. It's one thing to be betrayed. It's another to be deleted. That night, after dinner and dishes were cleared, I sat alone in my apartment. My phone buzzed. A voice message. Luca. I hesitated before pressing play. Hey! His voice cracked slightly. I don't know if this is okay. I just wanted to say, I hope you're all right. I know it's been messy. You deserve peace, Dorian, but not the kind that destroys everyone around you. The message ended. I played it again, slower the second time. He meant well. I knew that. But somewhere in the middle of his kindness was a request I couldn't grant anymore. Go back to being the quiet one, the reasonable one, the peacemaker, the role that kept me silent while they took everything. I deleted the message. No hesitation this time. I did choose peace, I whispered. Mine. It was a little after 10 when I heard a soft knock on my bedroom door. My mother stepped in, holding a wrapped box with a ribbon. Juliet picked this for you, she said, placing it gently on my desk. Just something small. I didn't unwrap it immediately. I just sat there, staring at the shape, the colors, the presentation. Finally, I opened it. A book, Let It Go. Finding Joy in Surrender. I chuckled. Quiet, sharp. This wasn't a gift. It was a message, a directive, a reminder. Surrender. Be silent. Be the son who swallows his voice again. I closed the book and placed it on the lower shelf of my desk. Didn't say a word. By Saturday, the event was in full swing. I didn't plan to go, but I went anyway. Everyone wore earth tones, light browns, soft greens, coordinated like they were casting a commercial. The photographer directed people with practiced ease. Juliet in the center. Parents on both sides. Dorian, just a little more left. Perfect. I stood near the end of the row. The fringe of the family tapestry. Halfway through, someone moved in, one of Juliet's business partners. She slid into the middle. I took a breath, then stepped out. No one said a word, not even a whisper. They won't notice, I thought. Not today, maybe not ever. On the way home, I stopped by a cafe downtown. I ordered black coffee and found a quiet table by the window. I opened my laptop, pulled up my files, started a new document. Itemized financial transfers to Juliet Keller line by line, I wrote. Car valuation, business inventory links, refund check details. It wasn't rage, it wasn't revenge, it was record keeping. They trained me to endure. What they didn't expect is that I kept receipts. The group text came in at 6:42 a.m. It was from Mom, just a link and one line of text. So proud of Juliet. No context, no good morning. I tapped the video. It opened with soft piano music and a slow pan over our childhood home. Except the walls had been edited in post, brighter, cleaner. Then came the family photos. Juliet in every major life event, framed perfectly, smiling. Graduation, her first car. Prom, no sign of me. Then the car appeared. My Mustang, parked in front of her pop-up shop, wrapped in her brand's colors, logo across the hood like a sponsored race car. She stood next to it, arms crossed, grinning at the camera. I wouldn't be here today, she said in the voiceover, without the endless support of my parents. Their belief in me was the foundation I built this dream on. I paused the video. Not a word about the wedding fund. Not a mention of the car being mine. Just rewrites. My hands didn't shake. Not anymore. Betrayal doesn't always arrive with a bang. Sometimes it drips until you drown. Later that morning, I walked through the community market. Farmers lined both sides of the path. Kids ran between booths with face paint. A guitarist strummed under a tent. It should have felt nice. Instead, I kept hearing echoes. Your sister is really something, a woman from church said, stopping me near the jam stand. She told us you were her silent investor. Always so generous. I smiled. The kind that isn't real. Yeah, that's what they call it when you don't scream while they take. She chuckled like I was joking and moved on. A few booths down, I saw Juliet standing on a small platform with a microphone. People gathered in front. A camera crew was rolling. You know, she said, some people have money. I had belief. Belief wins. The crowd clapped. She held her smile like it was permanent. I didn't move, just watched. That wasn't ignorance. That was intentional. By nightfall, I was at the front door again. Mom answered with her usual brightness, manufactured, controlled. Did you see the video? Wasn't it beautiful? It was, I said, especially the parts I paid for. She blinked. Something in her cheeks tensed. Juliet appeared behind her, swirling wine in a glass like she hadn't just rewritten reality. "Oh, come on," she said. "You've always been the quiet one. I figured you'd appreciate staying behind the scenes." I stared at her for a long second. "That assumption," I said slowly, "is why you're going to regret this. No shouting, no slammed doors." I walked past both of them, straight into the office room, grabbed the last folder I needed, and left without another word. Back home, I sat down at my desk, opened a new folder on my laptop. Label, Notice of Recompense. Inside went every receipt I had: purchase of the Mustang, insurance documents, body shop invoices, license transfers. I clicked open a legal template site and started drafting. Formal notice of asset misuse, including potential damages, projected value, and commercial use without consent. I didn't hit send, not yet. They'd always called me the quiet one. What they didn't realize was I'd been paying attention. The next morning, I changed the garage passcode, deleted the spare Mom had saved on her phone. At the post office, I paid for certified mail to Juliet's business address. Inside, a cease and desist letter. Subject line, Unauthorized use of vehicle for promotional gain. At the notary, I moved the Mustang's title into a trust, under my name only, protected, sealed. I went home, opened my laptop, and searched for attorneys in town who specialized in family financial disputes, made notes, saved bookmarks. I closed the laptop, sat back, and for the first time in this whole mess, I felt ready. They thought silence was compliance. It wasn't. Silence was me preparing. I sent the email at exactly 4:07 p.m. Subject line, Financial Summary, for transparency. No need for intros, no need for apologies. It went out to every family member, even the distant ones who only show up for funerals and Facebook birthdays. I included the PDFs, itemized breakdown of the money taken from my wedding account, notarized documents proving the Mustang's title was still in my name, and bank records showing transfers linked to Juliet's business. No accusations, no flair, just data. The last line read, "This is not a threat. This is a line." Then I closed my laptop and waited. No pings, no calls, just silence, but not the kind I grew up with. This one had weight, like they were all staring at their screens with a tight throat, realizing I had receipts. That evening, I drove over to the house, not to talk, just to grab a tax folder I'd left in the garage file cabinet. I didn't expect anything to change, but I also didn't expect what I saw. The garage wasn't a garage anymore. Juliet had turned it into a branding studio, fabric banners with her logo hung from the rafters. Makeup inventory was stacked along the far wall. Studio lighting kits pointed toward the Mustang, which sat shoved in the corner, draped in soft pink cloth, decals on the windshield. My car, drowned in her aesthetic. I didn't touch anything. I just took out my phone and snapped pictures, angles, timestamps, full coverage. They didn't just take space, I thought. They made it look like it was never mine. Inside, Mom was in the kitchen. She scrubbed a spotless plate in the sink. Her back was to me, but she spoke first. "You're making things complicated," she said gently, the same tone she used when I broke a dish at age 8. "This is all just a misunderstanding." I stayed by the doorway. "What you call complicated, I call correction." She turned slightly. "We're family." Juliet entered behind me, arms crossed like I'd walked into her office. "It's just temporary. You're blowing it out of proportion." I looked at both of them, voice steady. "You're not sorry. You're just surprised I didn't stay quiet." I didn't need more. I grabbed the folder from the cabinet and walked out the front door. Dad was out front, watering the edge of the lawn like he always did when stress came knocking. I walked past him, but he called out, "Dorian." I stopped near the mailbox. "I wanted to help," he said. "I offered my pension when you said you were getting married." I turned. "Then why didn't you?" He looked down. "Your mother said it wasn't necessary, that you wouldn't mind." For a second, I saw guilt pull at his mouth, a subtle twitch. "She was right about one thing," I said. "I didn't complain." Then I stepped closer. "But that ends now." I got home after dark, set my bag down, turned on the desk lamp. The envelope from the lawyer sat where I left it the day before. I opened it, reviewed the wording one last time. Clean, precise, request for asset recovery. Legal filing number, copy of cease and desist. I clicked send on the attorney's notice to Juliet's business. Then I drafted a second email, this time only to Mom and Juliet. Subject line, legal action pending if restitution not initiated. There was no need for extra words. They built a story on the assumption I'd stay quiet. I just rewrote the ending. As I closed the laptop, something shifted inside me. Not anger, not relief, control. And for once, I wasn't afraid of being called the difficult one. It was supposed to be a barbecue. Raylene called it a chance to reconnect. She made it sound light, like this wasn't about damage control. But I knew better. When I pulled into the driveway, there were already half a dozen cars lined up along the curb. I walked in through the side gate, the smell of grilled chicken and overcooked corn thick in the air. Folding chairs were arranged in a half circle under the maple tree. People laughed like nothing had happened. Juliet was center stage, of course, holding court in a cream sundress, pouring lemonade like a hostess on a daytime TV show. Dad was at the grill, pretending he didn't see me walk in. I nodded at a few cousins. Polite, cold, controlled. I had a thumb drive in my pocket, a manila envelope in my bag, and a memory full of names that had only ever reached out to me when they needed help. This wasn't a gathering. It was theater. I sat on the porch steps for a while, didn't speak unless spoken to. I was good at that. Inside, Sybil's little girl was flipping through photo albums stacked near the living room table. She stopped at the wall of frames, the family wall. She tilted her head and asked, "Why isn't there a picture of Uncle Dorian?" The laughter in the room froze. One cousin coughed. Another looked at her shoes. Raylene, without missing a beat, smiled and said, "We just haven't updated that wall yet, sweetie." I stood beside it. Dozens of frames. Birthdays, vacations, graduations, holidays. Not a single photo of me. Not even one from childhood. They didn't forget, I told myself. They erased. Dinner passed without incident. I ate just enough to keep questions at bay. Then I stood. 5 minutes, I said. That's all I need? The room quieted. I connected my laptop to the TV, clicked open a video file. It was the bank footage, crystal clear. Raylene standing at the counter, signing a withdrawal slip with my forged signature. Date stamped. Camera angle, no question. Then came the emails. Juliet requesting access to the Mustang, her assistant confirming pickup, screenshots of her product line shot with my car in the background. I let the silence sit. I didn't want this, I said, but I'm done being silent just to make this room comfortable. Raylene's face turned pale. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Edgar stared at the carpet. Juliet laughed. "You've always been bitter. You're just looking for revenge." I met her eyes. "No, this is my record, and you gave me the material." A cousin near the door asked quietly, "Can I see that email again?" Someone else grabbed their purse and stood up. The illusion shattered, not with yelling, but with precision. I packed my laptop slowly. No rush, no drama. I thanked everyone for their time. Before I stepped out, I turned to Raylene. "You taught me silence meant peace," I said. Turns out, silence only protects the loudest voice in the room. She didn't reply. At the door, Sybil caught up with me. She didn't say anything, just slipped something into my hand. I looked down. A photo. Me. Maybe 5 years old. Standing in the backyard with my toy truck. Smiling. Framed in the kind of love I hadn't seen in years. It had been upstairs all along, just never displayed. Turns out they did remember. They just didn't want others to. The email came in just past midnight. Subject line, "Last chance." It was short, clinical, wrapped in soft threats and hard guilt. I read it twice. "This can all go away if you stop now. You're breaking the family." Signed by both Raylene and Juliet. No apology, no ownership, just veiled manipulation under the guise of concern. They didn't ask me to come home. They asked me to surrender. I stared at the screen, unmoved, then clicked forward, attached it to a new thread to my attorney with the note. Adding to documentation. That was their last chance. Juliet's launch event was 2 days later. held in a rented hall on the edge of town, complete with press banners, step-and-repeat walls, soft jazz playing over wireless speakers. I wore a navy suit, no tie, no emotion. The room buzzed. Her assistants moved like they were choreographed. Guests took selfies near flower arches. I didn't mingle, didn't announce myself. I waited. When the slideshow began, I moved to the back of the room. My thumb hovered over the envelope in my inside pocket. The screen showed footage of Juliet's product shoots, clips of her workshops, praise from lifestyle influencers. Then the family gratitude section appeared. Photos of her with our parents, with aunts, neighbors, and then a freeze frame of her standing in front of my Mustang. Her narration: everything I've built came from belief, from the people who saw me, who supported me. That was the moment I stepped forward. I handed the envelope to the event organizer near the screen and said, "You'll want to read that aloud." She hesitated. I nodded. Her voice shook slightly as she read, "This car, featured in the promotional materials, is registered to Dorian Keller. Its use in marketing was unauthorized. Attached are legal records, including title and pending cease and desist." The room went still. Gasps. Whispers. Then the unmistakable sound of phones being raised to record. Juliet stood frozen, her smile collapsing in slow motion. I didn't wait for the fallout. I turned and walked out of the hall. A reporter outside, notepad already in hand, asked, "Mr. Keller, do you have a statement?" I met her eyes. Sometimes the truth is quiet, but it shows up eventually. I got into my rental car and drove away. My phone rang halfway through town. Raylene. I let it ring. Forgiveness isn't always strength. Sometimes not answering is. By the time I got home, the internet had done what it always does. Hashtag Juliet Keller was trending. Screenshots of the documents, clips from the event, threads unpacking every detail of the video timeline, each inconsistency in her story, every trace of entitlement now exposed. Raylene had released a statement by morning. "Our family matter is being twisted. My son is deeply troubled." That was her defense. I didn't respond with rage. I posted one line. "You raised me to stay quiet. You just never asked what I'd do once I found my voice." And then I made a video. Not long, just me. One camera, no music. I laid out the facts, 8 years of savings, the purchase of a car, the redirection of wedding funds without consent, the launch of a business I was never asked to be part of, yet funded anyway. No tears, no raised voice. "This isn't about money," I said at the end. "It's about worth, and I'm reclaiming mine." By the next day, it had over 2 million views. The top comment read, "You didn't burn the bridge, you just refused to be the wood." I liked it, because they tried to rewrite the story, but I still had the pen, and I hadn't finished. It had been 4 days since the launch event. No calls from Raylene, no texts from Juliet, not even a vague apology wrapped in fake concern. Silence used to feel heavy. This time, it felt earned. Not victory, just air. Finally, I opened my inbox that morning and saw one new message from Edgar. Subject: "Hope you're okay." That was it. I didn't reply. Later that afternoon, I walked into town, past the bakery where I used to buy birthday cupcakes for myself. People looked up when I walked by. Some gave a nod, others a faint smile. No one said anything loud, but they didn't have to. At the coffee shop near the corner, the young barista handed me my order without a word, then paused. "Your video," she said, voice quiet. It mattered. I nodded. "Thanks." For the first time in months, maybe years, I smiled without forcing it. The next day, I went to get the Mustang. The garage was quiet, stripped of banners and boxes. I'd already moved the legal process forward, but now it was official. The car was in my name, titled Untouchable. I installed a new keypad, changed the code, wiped every old access Raylene ever had. As I stepped back, key fob in hand, I heard the shuffle of shoes behind me. She was standing at the edge of the driveway. Hair done, lipstick neat, holding a Tupperware container like it was still 1998. "Can we talk?" she asked. I didn't flinch, didn't shift. "Not yet," I said. "Maybe not ever." She nodded, as if she expected that. I locked the garage and turned away. The code was changed, on the door and in me. That evening, back in my apartment, I found something in the mailbox that stopped me cold. A wedding invitation from a coworker. Simple, tri-folded, embossed lettering, gold trim. It was almost identical to the one I'd designed, the one they laughed at, called tacky, childish. I sat at my desk, fingers running over the raised lettering. She didn't like it, but it was always mine. I pinned it to the board beside the crumpled original. No resentment, just a line, past and present, side by side. Later that night, I wrote a letter. Not to send, just to write. Dear Mom, thank you for the birthdays you did show up for dinners, for the songs you sang when I was too sick to sleep. Thank you for the effort I know you gave in the only way you knew how, but love that needs to erase me in order to serve someone else. That isn't love. I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer. Not for her, for me. I didn't need her to read it. I just needed to know I could say it. The next weekend, I walked past the church where Juliet once hosted that community seminar. The posters were gone. Her website had been taken down. Sponsors pulled out. I didn't feel proud. I felt free. At home, I opened the video platform where I had uploaded my statement. The views were still climbing. But I wasn't chasing them anymore. Scrolling through the comments, one caught my eye. You didn't ask for justice. You became it. I read it twice. Then I opened a blank document. Title: When Silence Breaks, a Memoir. I'd lived too long in the back row, in the unspoken, in the edited out. Now I'd speak. I didn't burn the bridge. I just learned how to swim without it.